It's pretty well known, I think. I've heard people talking about it after I came up with my notes for this case. But to me, it's something I've never heard of before you guys mentioned it. This week has been a mess as far as uploads. I'm trying to do I tried to do my part 2 of the series for Dear Zach on Monday. It would only upload a few minutes and cut it. I tried I don't even know how many times, but more than 4. And for a 4 GB video on a public internet, it was kind of painful. But then I was trying to do the Patreon video. Same thing. It was a 30-minute video. Only 10 minutes would let me upload and cut it. Something was up with YouTube on Monday, and now Tuesday, internet super slow. Needless to say, it has been kind of a weird week for me on YouTube. However, I have the cases researched and I have my notes. So, here I go again to try to upload this on Wednesday, February the 10th. Let's see what happens. Today I also have the windows open, so if you hear water, it's the pond. And if you hear splashing, there's a couple of big catfish in there. And I think catfish like to jump every once in a while. It got nicer today, 60s. We're in the 60s, but there's another storm coming for the weekend, so the window's open. Make sure to get the humidity out of our bedrooms and stuff, and get ready for another storm soon. But what do? We're still in winter. Now, let's talk about today's case. Today's case touches on very important matters, and I want to do a little disclaimer here. Maybe this can be triggers for you, but we're going to talk about domestic violence. Our relationship, oh gosh, I shouldn't call it a relationship. Let's call it that so I don't have to use the bad words that YouTube hates. But a relationship between a 16-year-old and a very much old guy, older than her father guy. It touches on the suffering of somebody before passing, and this is caused by the perpetrator, and it touches in a few. I'll touch on some details of what happened and what she endured. However, you can skip ahead. I will let you know before I start giving you details. You can skip ahead assume it was a teenage crush and that it was probably a boy from school. She was such a responsible young girl that they didn't see any harm on her having this little boyfriend at the age of 14. Margaret and Tommy wanted to raise independent children, so they often trusted Kelly's choices. So, in this case in particular, they gave Kelly a long leash, long enough to spend time with her boyfriend whenever she wanted. But things escalated and Kelly started to stay over at her boyfriend's for the night. And when she would come home, she'd tell her parents that she was staying at her friend's house, Rachel. Her parents were very trusting, but they were not dumb. They couldn't believe it, but they didn't do much about it. Then, all of a sudden, they started to receive calls from Dave, the boyfriend, who was calling the Bates to ask about Kelly. So it seemed like Kelly was spending a lot of time with her boyfriend, but also spending time out with her friends, and it seemed like Dave really didn't trust her that much. When Kelly turned 16, she came to her parents with the idea of dropping out of school. And not only that, but also moving out of the house and in with her boyfriend. And that is when the parents drew a line. They were not happy with that idea, but Kelly was used to doing whatever she wanted to do. And when she didn't listen, her parents called the social services and even the police. But for the UK, or at least their laws, this was a little too late, and they couldn't do anything to stop Kelly from doing what she wanted to do. So they tried to mend things with their daughter and ended up asking to meet this new boyfriend of hers, Dave. And when the time came and they met finally, the boyfriend, they just couldn't believe it. Dave was not a boy, and he told them that he was 32 years old, which is double her age. I know. Margaret just couldn't even believe he was that old. And after doing a little bit of research, looking into it, they found out he was not 32, but he was 48 years old. That meant that he was older than her father. You mean? In that research, she also found out that his name was not Dave or David. His name was She was very flattered that this man noticed her. But soon after she moved out, the relationship turned into a control slash power game for James. As soon as she moved in, he started to control everything she did. Kelly's friends and family noticed that she was not bright and bubbly and kind of became a sad version of herself, almost unrecognizable. There was this one time where it is said, not confirmed, but I read that she kind of escaped his ruling and visited her parents. She kind of had to have this as a secret, at least for the time being, because James wanted to have her for himself and separate her from her family and friends, which is something very normal in an abusive relationship. Typical, not normal, typical. The person is either insecure and they think that, the other person is going to find somebody better than them. So they control the time that they go in or out of the house, who they talk to, who they text, where they're with. Modern relationships, asking to take pictures of where they are or who they're with. Even GPS at this point to know exactly where they are. And I'm not saying that this is the case, in this particular case, but it was showing how this domestic violence and abuse and in a relationship, that it was wrong from the very beginning. And that guy, it's a PEDO. I mean, just there's no way around that. Now, on that occasion, her mom described her as troubled, depressed, but when she was asked, she wouldn't say why. And I have to say that I've met people in this situation, and not with this age gap, but in this particular abusive relationship, and in my humble opinion, I think that sometimes they don't even know why they are troubled or depressed. They're so used to that kind of it's not even a relationship, but they are so used to the abuse that they can't put their fingers or their finger on it. But this case was a little bit more scary too, because she also had bruises on her arms and her face. But I assume her parents were really concerned. But couldn't convince her, because one day, in another occasion, she came home with the whole side of her face bruised. And it was said that's when they really knew something was that's exactly how they were feeling at the time. But I think that, from the outside, you see the signs and you want to help somebody going through this. But when they're deep into it, they are hard to convince that that's not okay. And I think that these parents were trying to wake Kelly up and tell her, well, that's not how things work. But Kelly would lie. And in that time she said she was jumped by a group of girls that beat her up. She come back some other time, or she went back some other time, and she had bruises each time in a different spot, and she would change the story. Her parents had no idea, but James had a long history of domestic violence. And one day, Margaret had enough, and she decided to go to the police to report this abuse on her daughter. The police told her that she needed to take her daughter to a clinic, show the injuries, and they could document the abuse so they could, stand a chance in court. But Kelly did not want to go. And because she was 16, she had the right to say no. Her mom at this point was desperate. The next time she saw her daughter, she had a bite mark on her arm. Kelly said she fell and caught her arm on a chain link fence. In November of 1995, Margaret begged Kelly to leave this man. Once again, but Kelly was so mad at her mom that she said she wasn't going to come back visit anymore because she truly wanted to avoid his conversations. And she kept her word, but kept in touch over the phone. It is possible that he was tightening the leash, I guess, on their relationship, and that he didn't want this kind of visits. Maybe he found out. And it is possible that it was kind of a mix of Kelly getting tired of answering what was wrong with all those bruises on her body, and not wanting to answer what was wrong in their relationship. Or maybe James had a little bit more to do with it. A few months later, Kelly calls her mom and tells her that she'd gotten a job at a factory and was working long hours and weekends. She said that she wasn't going to be able to be around much or even call. After that, the calls stopped. In March 1996, Margaret got a Mother's Day card and Tommy a birthday card. They were excited to receive something from Kelly, hoping that, they had some news from their daughter. But when they opened the cards, they realized they were not written by Kelly. Someone was toying with them. this was not a typical drowning. There was blood everywhere. The cause of death was drowning. But according to the police and their report, she was or had been held prisoner for at least 3 weeks. Now, I'm gonna try to. I have exactly the words that you'd use to describe what she looked like, but I'm gonna try to make it. I don't know. I'm gonna try to go quickly through what it looked like. If you don't want to listen to these details, please skip ahead 20 seconds or so by double tapping on your phone. She had 150 separate injuries. Her eyes were not, they were taken out. She had, after her eyes were taken out, he put a knife inside her eye sockets. Her mouth was cut and messed with, as well as her ears, her nose, and her genitalia. She was also where she had been scalded with boiling water, burned with a hot iron, stabbed and cut with knives, forks, pruning shears and scissors, and her knees had been kicked in. I debated leaving all those details out of this video, but I'm gonna take the risk and add them because I think I wouldn't be doing justice to her case if I left them out. I don't think anybody in the true crime community really enjoys learning about the details, but it gives you a better picture of what really happened and how severe were the things that led to somebody's passing. I think it gives you a better idea of the kind of person that did this to her, and it opens your mind to different possibilities. If I would have said that she passed and it was bloody and cause of death was drowning, you would see this guy, James, as a different kind of a bad guy. But I think that after going through these details, now you know that he is completely out of his mind and that he is the amount of torture and things she had to endure just so she could pass. It's unspeakable. She was also, just to add to this, okay. Apparently before, when everything started, she was tied to a radiator by her hair. And she didn't have her eyes for a week before she passed. She was dehydrated, starved, and lost about 45 pounds. But who the heck is domestic altercations. She survived the relationship, so she was a lucky one. But then he dated a girl, I think she was in her 20s, and he was already well into his 30s. And the girl described herself as his personal punching bag. And even while pregnant, that was happening. He eventually tried to end her life by putting her underwater. So, he was charged, and his defense was pretty unbelievable. Of course, he was charged with Kelly's murder. He said that he caused all that pain to her because she taunted him about his mom's passing. He also defended himself, saying that Kelly used to hurt herself to make him look bad, and her eyes being out was just because she dared him to do it. With that amazing defense and excuses, you can probably guess that it didn't take more than an hour for the jury to come back with a guilty verdict. And he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum of 20 years. It works different. Different countries have a life sentence that means different things, and I'm not gonna get into that right now. The jury had to go through the pictures of the crime scene and the physical evidence, and they were so terrible that they had to have psychological counseling after the trial. Kelly's body was put to rest the day before her 18th birthday. And kind of shows what kind of damage can be done when this kind of relationships happen. Number one, double your age while you're still a minor. It's absolutely not only disgusting, unacceptable, but wrong in all levels. I understand that sometimes girls are more mature than boys at their same age. Totally get that. My husband is 4 years older than me, but one thing is 4 years older, and another thing is double your age older. And it kind of takes you back to the understanding of being a parent, how hard it is to do the right thing and find a perfect balance of trusting your kids enough to make the wrong decisions and pay the consequences while they are still young, and the consequences are usually not terrible. Or being the strict parent that if they have a child like I was, kind of keeps you up at night because there's no perfect balance in parenthood, I guess. All kids are different. I see it with my kids. Same mom, same dad. Completely four different individuals who enjoy different things, who hate different things. Some love math and are good at it. Some other ones struggle so much that require extra help. Some are more bright and, cheerful, and some other ones are more reserved and quiet. And so I think it's really the balance as a parent to know how to parent all of your kids, no matter how different they are. And no, there's no one way that you should teach your kids. It doesn't work with all of them, unless you have one, and then that has to work. But I think we all treat our kids differently, depending on who they are, but we all try to keep the same morals and same grounds or common ground for all of them. So I'm not here to judge Margaret and her husband's parenting skills. I'm sure they loved Kelly very much, and I'm sure Kelly loved them very much. But that is why it's penalized, at least here in the States, for this kind of relationship, that it's actually a PEDO kind of character, this guy James. You cannot be dating a 16-year-old. And, they were saying that he was 32, so double her age, but he was actually 48. So, quite a bit more than double her age. Even if he was the age he was saying he was, which he wasn't. How do you convince somebody that is, into an abusive relationship that's not normal, that's not the way to go, that's not what you want for your life? Such a combination of terrible different things in one case, like being a parent and trying to make the right decision, take the right decision. A guy that is too old and too creepy to be with a 16-year-old. And then domestic violence, and a guy that is out of his mind, just to name a few. I don't think Kelly's